Hey guys, what's up? It's Stacking Chairs, a youth ministry podcast all about serving in youth ministry. Whether it be youth group or youth camp, whatever God has you serving in, that's what we're talking about. I'm one of your hosts, Josh Balhamus. I'm joined by my fellow host and good friend,
Kyle Gray. Josh, I love how I think you say that word for word verbatim every single time.
I memorized it.
You've got it down but Josh, let me ask you, if you would do it differently, how would you do it?
I would do it exactly as I'm doing it now. In fact, actually, when I first started, I would just kind of make it up on the spot. And then I was like, I should write this down.
How many times do you practice to memorize it?
And have you ever done it in front of the mirror?
Not in front of the mirror. I remember practicing in the office before we started recording using that. We did it very early on, maybe episode 8.
Be honest, you told your wife about it, didn't you?
100%. Yeah. No, I was proud
Did she
of it.
approve?
But Josh lets weird moments like that live in his head, because I know I let weird moments like that live in my head. Josh, I love that we get to do this podcast.
Yeah.
I love that we get to bring some people on, but I really love when we have those awesome friends that come back and do it again. And so, ladies and gentlemen, joining us again this time, Mr. Erick Gill. How you doing, Eric? Welcome back.
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me today.
Listen,
I'm excited.
It's
Kyle
so fun.
Kyle said we had to. So.
No option. You had no option.
He's one of our Pursuit Camp speakers again. At the end of the day, I owe his sister-in-law a couple favors, and so
So throw a bone.
Shout out to Shelby Gill and Erick Gill.
Yeah.
Hey, can you confirm your older brother's name is Eddie?
Correct.
Your name is Erick.
Correct.
And your parents just got kind of lazy and just said, let's just take the two
Or
names.
creative.
Or
creative.
Hey, you know
Plot
what?
twist.
That's a good perspective.
Yeah.
That is a
man.
plot twist.
Yeah.
So
I love that
see
the
that
names are
coming.
a combination though. Like Eddie and Erick together is Edric.
Ed
is
and
Edric.
Eddie.
That's right. And but what's crazy is I will regularly call him Edric, and I will regularly call Edric Erick.
It's all right. You're in fine company. My parents do that all the time.
But I never call any of them Eddie.
Never.
So,
No.
Nobody talk about Eddie.
we don't talk about Eddie. So Erick, I was about to call you Edric. Erick, what are you doing now? Because last time you were here, you were the senior pastor. You were the senior high youth pastor.
Congratulations.
You were the student minister. But that's not your role anymore.
That's correct. It's not longer my role. I currently serve as our young adult pastor. We saw a need in our church for young adults. There's a need out there for people within the ages of 18 and 35. And so we wanted to meet that need. And so that's essentially what I'm doing right now. Just ministering to that age group.
So we were just talking about for next year for Pursuit Camp, we actually are playing around with the idea of one of those weekends being for 19 to 30-year-olds.
Are you actually?
Yeah.
Listen.
And making it like a college and career weekend.
That would be
idea.
amazing.
And then our counselors would not be counselors, but they would be room hosts to just kind of help. Because let's be honest, or let's be, honest, transparent.
You can be honest.
Thank you. I don't like cats.
Oh, I hate cats.
Sorry, I was being honest.
No, listen. I'm there with you.
We're on the same page.
If you're watching, I have a cat named Justin that I'm trying to get rid of.
Justin?
Justin.
Listen, if my cat was named Justin, I'd want to get rid of it too.
No, it's named after a friend that I don't like either. So we're being honest.
Does Justin know that?
He knows that.
Hey, Jenny, your wife.
My wife.
Does Jenny know you don't like
Oh, she knows it.
both Justin?
We have had the cat for about 6 months, 8 months, and I'm still to pet him.
Wow, that was quick.
Wow. Hey, when you see Justin Crow later on,
tell him it's named
he
for him.
loves cats.
Does he actually?
He loves cats.
I'm gonna chip through UPS.
Listen.
Justin through UPS.
Justin will have the cat Justin.
Yeah.
Let's be transparent. College and career ministry either goes really, really well or limps along till it dies.
Yes.
There doesn't really seem to be this happy medium.
Yeah.
And I think in many ways they're the forgotten group.
And you know why? It's because you have churches that do an excellent job with the children's ministry.
Yep.
We do an excellent job with student ministry.
Yep.
But as soon as they go to college, we leave them to fend for themselves.
Well, but let's be honest. I don't think they know what to do with college and career.
No, you don't know. But at the same time, there's not I'm not saying it's the case with every single church, but for the most part, it's, we consider them adults. And so we think, they're part of the bigger church.
Well, and they are adults. So
They are.
We gotta be.
Well, and
But they're still figuring out life.
so let me ask you a question. So we talked about this on a previous episode.
Yeah, with who was it?
It was Jason Lamb, wasn't it?
No. It was Ale Noesh.
Oh,
We talked with Ale,
well, we
'cause he
talked
does
about
this
that.
in Argentina.
Yes, we talked about that. But the question that we talked about before, or another time, was when you graduate high school, do you make them wait a year or two before they serve in youth ministry, or do you let them serve right away? We talked about that different churches do it differently.
Yes.
So what do you guys allow?
We will say, so we split our middle school and high school. So we will say if you just graduated, we will encourage them and ask them to serve in the middle school. So there's that age gap.
Nice. That's
what if they go, I don't want to do that. I want to serve in high school.
Then we will take them case by case.
Oh,
yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. I mean,
case by case.
Yeah. It's not a one size fits all.
It sounds like a sleuth detective right there.
Yeah.
Case by case. This case really had me bugungled. Okay. That's awesome.
Don't you do weird sound? Do a weird sound for him.
I don't remember where they all are anymore. Let me check.
Well, and
that was the time for you to do that.
He adds in a lot of stuff post.
Yeah. I did add the wink.
What's it called?
Post haste.
I'm
kidding. No, in post. It's called post. Yeah.
I was thinking of a different post, which I'm not mentioning because I don't know if you guys will advertise him.
Malone?
Malone Coach.
Who sounds like another sleuth detective. Today we're going to talk about change. Erick, you've been in ministry how long?
So I've been in full-time ministry for about 8-7 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
Prior to that, though, you were working with Tommy Sewell and those guys up in New York for a couple different years.
And then prior to that, Score International and Dominican Republic.
Oh,
and we did the Bible Institute together,
Yeah.
which we talked about, I think, last episode as well.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And both of you have a connection to the Dominican Republic, which so do I now. Three-person high five.
Oh.
Nice. Nailed it.
There's no need for a sound effect because it didn't work.
Yeah.
Okay, so Erick, you've been around in ministry for a long time. Your parents are in ministry.
Yep.
You grew up in a ministry family,
Correct.
right? So I'm sure, looking back, you've seen a lot of change. You've seen a lot of development. But let's be honest, and Josh, even you and I, change is hard.
No, it is. It absolutely is.
We like doing the things the way that we do it, and have you ever had one of those moments where you look back and you go, I know this isn't the best way to do it, but it's just the way that I like.
Yes. Yes.
For sure.
All the time.
Yeah.
So let's talk about ministry change. Let's talk about I think Josh, you titled this episode.
The plan is to title it "If I Knew Now What I Knew Then."
It's okay. So you need to verify.
Yeah, I may have changed it by the time.
I don't know who I'm pointing to, but I'm pointing to you. By the way, if you don't know I'm pointing,
Rachel,
it's because you're listening.
We're looking at you.
And Justin.
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 Can't stand
man.
it.
Justin the cat.
Listen, cats just don't care about you. Cats
Oh,
literally
my
will
word.
do whatever they want to do.
Yeah.
Cats are like, I don't like you, and I
comes
need you
out
to
of
know
nowhere.
you're my pet. Whereas dogs are like, love me, love me, love me. I also asked somebody this the other day, and you may cut this out. Name me one other cult that worships or a religion that has worshipped dogs. I can't think of one, but I can think of several throughout history that worshipped cats.
Wow.
Yeah, no, that's
hey,
true.
good
Cats,
point.
idols,
Yeah.
Yeah,
idolatry.
idols, idolatry.
No, we'll leave that.
Things from the
Jenny, if
devil.
you're watching, we need to get rid of the idols in our home.
We don't want the ground to swallow you up like they did
yeah.
Drake. All right. So, Josh, my thought was let's just throw out a couple different aspects and kind of just
Different areas of our lives or our ministries where,
absolutely.
What would we do if we could do it differently?
And these are the areas of our lives.
See, the first thing I think of is the song "My Way."
Frank Sinatra.
And he talks about the regrets I have a few, but then again, too few to mention.
I've had a few.
And then there's also a movie that talks about
again,
the hard times. Sorry, I'm not moving on. I'm just kind of like
You changed.
expounding. Yeah, I did change. And that's if I do
You've
that.
changed, Josh.
Well, I'm good. I'm glad.
Good thing
for
we're
that.
in a podcast talking about change.
Hey.
Yeah.
But there's a line in a movie where they talk about the hard times in our lives are the times that were actually our happiest because they're the ones that define us.
Ooh.
And so knowing what we know now gives us that opportunity to look back and say, I wish I would have done. So we want to clarify a little bit, we wouldn't change the things that we did back then because they made us who we are. And we're thankful that God used them to make them who we are. But
So there's a scene in The Lord of the Rings
okay, I've heard of that.
where Frodo says to Gandalf, I wish that this had never happened to me in my time.
Yeah.
So do I, said Gandalf. So do all those who live in times such as these. But it is not for them to decide.
Mm-hmm.
All we have to decide is what to do with the time that has been given to us.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, thanks so much for joining us on Stack.
I'm Erick Gill. Thank you for coming.
I'm sure there are ministry aspects, but as you look back through, and I will say this, I think you have a very good heart and view on evangelism and equipping people for evangelism. But as you look back over time, and short caveat, Josh, one of the aspects to this conversation that we did talk about is there are things Erick, you said you started how long ago?
About 7, 8 years.
7, 8 years ago.
Yeah.
Ministry and life 7, 8 years ago in some aspects is very different.
Very different.
I was thinking about, I started in working on Word of Life Island in summer of 1999. There were things we did then that we could not do today.
We know some of the stories. I've had to come out of this podcast.
So I was driving down the road with my dad in a car and we slept on it.
I'll have to cut that out now too. Jeez, come on.
So talk to us about evangelism. How would you, looking back, what would you have done differently in equipping your students for evangelism, doing evangelistic events? How would?
So I looking back in retrospective, I think that one of my biggest mistakes was emphasizing student development over everything else. Now, that's going to sound bizarre because you're with youth ministry, right?
Yeah. So you would not have developed your students.
No, I would have.
Don't develop.
But I would have placed just as equal value to developing leaders. So you see, I feel like that because I was focusing so much so on the students, I would invest on one student, and then that product, or if I wanted to call him a product,
you can call him a product.
Yeah, I'll call him a product. That product will then leave and give up, and then every effort that I put into the one student was essentially gone away. Now, again, we can talk about God is the one who brings growth and all those different things. Amen. But nonetheless, in my student ministry, what I saw was I would spend all that time and effort on one student, 3 students, to trying to coach them, try to talk to them, to show them from the scripture the value of the gospel, why it should be gospel minded, how the gospel has the ability to transform life, and why we should be bold about it, right?
Yeah.
And then I would just see them leave and not buy in division.
Yeah.
Instead, I had a group of leaders. I had 10 leaders.
You're talking about adult leaders.
Adult leaders.
Okay.
10 to 20 leaders that were bought on the vision of being invested in the youth ministry, and that had I invested in them more and had I spent more time with them and developed them to be just as passionate as I was about the gospel, then now you're looking, not just me talking to 3 students, you're looking at 20, talking to 3, multiply, you do the math, I'm terrible at it. Wow, you're amazing. Put sound effects on that. But I would have seen a greater increase in our student ministry of an attitude that was in favor and passionate about the gospel.
Well, and that goes more so into not just evangelism, but discipleship.
Everything else.
Yeah.
Areas of, and Josh, I know I've never mentioned this before.
We're going to talk about like leadership,
doing like a planning meeting and planning out your.
That is novel.
So to change, I would not do plan. No. Okay. So you would equip those leaders, just to repeat back what I'm hearing you say, you would equip those leaders to essentially do the ministry, not just you being the figurehead. That's the one.
Yeah. So I'll give you an example. And this was like something that was, looking back, was clear that, this is what for me, now for you listening or watching, that might not be the case. But for me, what I remember during COVID, I was a youth pastor during COVID. So if you were a youth pastor during COVID, that was a unique season of life. You had to figure out, navigate the waters. You may still be doing that depending on where you're at. But I remember that when COVID first happened, that our churches were closed and churches in the area were closed. We had no access to school. We had no access to do church events. There was one student that I had identified that was a key student in our student body, that I knew that if I invested in him, or I believe that if I'd invested in him above everyone else, that student could help me bring more students into our student ministry. Now, there's some strategy into that. But what happened was I devoted myself during the entire pandemic to ministry to this student, to reach to the students. I neglected leaders. I neglected any other students. I identified him as the individual that I wanted to invest all my time. Yeah. And then COVID ended. Until this day, I still haven't heard from the student.
No way.
Yeah, no way. I would reach out to him, text him, hey man, praying for you. Hey, let's get together. Hey, I even in the midst of like all the insecurity and chaos, like I went to where he was working at, did things for him, care for him, and still today, it's just vanished. And then I look back and I think, what if I would have put that much effort in training leaders so that they themselves would have done the same thing that I was doing? And so that for me would have been something that, looking back and now in the front of my mind as I do this new ministry, to prioritize. to invest just as much as I invest with the students, to invest with my leaders.
That's sobering, honestly, like a little bit. Like, to be honest, like, now obviously we believe that like God's going to continue to work in that kid's life
absolutely.
because, he invests and you invest.
His word doesn't go void.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so, we can find solace in that and that God's in control of that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, it's sobering to me of like, am I diversifying my attention and making sure that I'm not focusing in on one individual or
Well, and let's be honest and real with ourselves.
Sure.
It's natural. It's natural for you to think these are the people we're ministering to, and these leaders are the ones we're ministering with.
Correct. Correct.
The problem is, no, we're ministering to those leaders in a different form and function, but we're ministering to, and in the same way, the hope is that we're ministering with these youth kids as well.
Yeah.
That's where I love, this is not original with me, but I loved what I was taught and trained, just to give credit where credit is due, that when we say every life reach and change for eternity, I want to look at I look at my leaders, I look at my campers, I look at my counselors, our summer camp staff, and I say, guys, if that change is not directed first and foremost at us, and then flow down to the campers.
Yeah.
Listen, we're the ones that have been in the Word of God the most. We should be changing the most.
Yeah.
But you hit into something, Keith, that I didn't realize till later on. It's like I went into your ministry looking at who is my target that I'm ministering to. So as the pastor, who are my chiefs that I'm going to be leading, right?
Yeah.
And I look exclusively to the students. I saw the leaders as other pastors, not to the extent of the ability that I had since I've been entrusted with the ministry and I was doing it full time, but as an aid to the ministry, which, although that is truth to your point, there were also people that I needed to minister to, people that I needed to spend time with, people that I needed to care for, people that I needed to sit down and say, hey, listen, this is the vision. Yeah. We want, like I told you last time, I think we were here, we talked about like marketing. And I said, like, our desire is that our students will know why we exist, which is to boldly share Christ in all areas of our life. I never sat down with my leaders that I think of, and I share that with them. They heard it, but not because I was just meeting just with them. They heard it because I was telling it to the students. So for them to vine in that vision never came in in the form of a personal invite. Yeah. It just came in the form of like them being part of the audience as a third party, Yeah. But how much different would it have been in my student ministry had I gone to my leaders and said to him, and listen, you have a role to play.
Yeah.
You can invest in the life of students and coach them and show them that they themselves, just like you, can boldly share Christ in all areas of their life.
That's sobering too, because I think of that, like in my youth group, I'm not in charge in the same way that you guys have been youth pastors. I'm a youth leader, so I'm the layman. But I think of like the leadership in my home. Like I got to lead small group the other day for my church, for our group, right? And so I'm going through this thing and I'm talking about it, and I'm having this moment of vulnerability or talking about whatever it was. I don't remember exactly what it was. And I said something, and I'm like, actually, you know what? I don't think I've told my wife this. And I've just kind of like assumed that she picked it up and shared something about like something that I was learning in scripture or whatever. But it's easy for us as leaders to assume that the people that we're closest with and serving with, like my wife in my scenario, assuming that they picked up on it because I didn't share it out loud. And then I share with another group and I say, okay, these are the people I'm like ministering to in this moment, as a youth leader, whatever. And I say, here's the thing that I'm learning. And my wife's sitting there and she's like, had no idea. Yeah. And that was convicting. And I'll be honest, I haven't like done a good job at like fixing that yet entirely. Like it's easy to just kind of like spend your time focusing on things. But like as a leader, it is your job to communicate your vision and goals. Just like working with Word of Life, we have meetings sometimes where they'll communicate vision and goals. And when they don't communicate those visions and goals, we all diversify and spread out and we don't focus on the same thing together. Yep. We're all guilty of that.
There's a vast world of difference between a group of people that show up at the same place at the same time and operate the same thing, and a team. who
You're right.
participates together.
You're right.
And I've shared this story before, so I won't go all the way into it. But for our new stackers that haven't gone back and watched all the episodes or listened to them, first of all, shame on you. Okay. But remember, do you remember I'm telling about the youth leaders meeting that we had where our youth pastor went on for about 3 hours and gave vision and talked about.
Yes.
And at the very end, one of the guys raised his hand and says, "Okay, but what do you want me to do?"
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And he got frustrated and he talked for another 2 hours and he was like, "No, but what do you want me to do?" Yeah. I think we're all guilty of, if you're around me,
you know, my
and
vision.
you see what's important to me, and you see an area that has to get done, you're just going to naturally step up and do it. Here's the problem, gentlemen. There are things that I'm doing that as long as I continue to do them, somebody else doesn't have the opportunity and joy to step up and to do it.
Yeah.
And I'm actually holding them back from ministry.
Yeah. And the thing with like going back to change, like, change can start with one individual.
Yep.
Like it can take one person to make a difference.
Yep.
But for it to last, it requires more than one.
Yep.
And so, if we want to go in youth ministry and make a lasting impact in our student ministry, to your point, there has to be a vision from the leader that, hey, you may be able to initiate the drive, but for you to get where you need to get, you're going to need other people that can jump alongside you, take on the role of driving as well, take on the role of inviting people and getting people in the car so that you can get where you need to get.
Which let's be absolutely transparent. That's hard for us to take areas that we might either really like or we might even be really good at. Now, whether we're actually really good at them or not, I don't know. But
it's another podcast.
It's hard to let go. It's hard to let go of things. Like I know every year about this time, my boss comes to me and says, "Hey, you don't need to be the one doing all the announcements. Hey, you don't need to be the one that's getting up and doing all the different things." Yeah. And he's absolutely right. Here's my problem. I know what I want to say. I know how I want it said, and I know how I want it delivered. But I, again, am stealing that opportunity from somebody being little sidestep question, because I think really we just talked about evangelism, discipleship, leadership training. We talked about all the different areas.
Yeah. Dude, we had a marriage thing too. I feel like I'm in a marriage podcast. Now. I'm feeling convicted.
By the way, shout out to Mela and Nicola and Jenny.
Our wives.
But not to Justin.
Not to Justin.
Yeah.
You don't like Justin. Does your wife watch your guys' podcast?
Mela does, and her supervisor.
Good for them.
Her supervisor does.
Justin doesn't watch it.
Oh, actually, you know what? Shout out to Don Reichert.
Don Locke?
Oh, Don Locke?
Don Locke? I don't know if Don listens to it.
Hey, Don Locke, anytime you want on the podcast, we'll let you on.
Don Reichert does, and I have never shouted him out, so
I love
shout out Don.
Okay, so as you're looking at this, would you have, I'm sure you had times where you've had to ask somebody to not be a leader on the team.
Yeah.
How would you have invited different people in, maybe vetted people differently, or maybe asked people to leave? Would you have changed if you focused on your leaders the way that you're talking about it? How would you have done that differently?
Is
that too raw?
I mean, it's up to him.
Yeah. So here's what.
Speaking about you, Justin.
Yeah, Justin. Speaking about Justin, you left
that cat.
Oh yeah, we're talking about the cat.
Yeah.
I was talking about the. No. So here's what I would have done differently. So when it came to recruiting leaders, I relied a lot on my other leaders that were there to do the recruiting. There was not that much of, there were times where I would take on the hat of like, I'm going to go out and recruit and identify people within our church that can make a difference. But most of it was just people from our leadership team. And what I noticed was, because I was not so much prioritizing the leadership, the standard and the quality and the level of vision continued to decrease. So I had a vision that I wanted to see in the ministry. There was something that I wanted to happen in that youth ministry.
Yeah.
But I did a poor job at communicating that to the leaders. The leaders that I had were not so bought in on the vision because they didn't know what the vision was.
Yeah.
So then when they were recruiting all the leaders, it's kind of like the telephone game, like I start telling you something, and by the time it goes around, what I start saying is distortion. Yeah. That's what I saw with some of my leaders.
Yeah. I have a question then on that same vein. Yeah. Did you find that there were anything, like, especially with like culture? You've been in the US now for 8-9 years?
Yeah. 9 years.
Did you find anything from your culture growing up that didn't translate and that played a hindrance into it? Or do you feel like that you've known the US culture well enough that didn't play a part?
It didn't. Coming into the US was not so much big of a culture shock. To Kyle's earlier point, I grew up and my parents are both in full-time ministry. Yeah. And so I grew up most of my life being around Americans and the American culture.
Sure. Okay.
So even though I live in the DR, I was familiarized. But I would say though, to culture, speaking of culture, what I've seen is as culture continued to progress and change, I've seen how that culture had affected the quality of leaders. That leaders that I had to talk to leaders that will stand up on things that were not biblical truth.
Yeah.
And
you had leaders.
I had leaders that would, I don't know how transparent and raw you want to be.
It's up to you.
Well, okay.
Yeah. Obviously we don't want to like trash anybody's name or anything, but like.
No. I mean, I won't say any names, but just Justin.
Sally Johnson.
Yeah.
You one time said
Justin the cat.
I just had, I remember like.
Sorry, Sally.
And I have a conviction that, of how God created man and woman, right? And I think that is not found in the scripture. That's not something that we can argue or something that we have freedom to try to figure out. Like it's clearly taught in the scripture.
Yeah.
And so to have leaders dealing with youth, students that they themselves had questions about that they themselves were trying to figure out, is it truly just man and woman? Or are there any other options? And so to be able to navigate this water and to have them be the one that then are going to go out and train and coach the students. So I had to deal with that, like the cultural influence, our current cultural influence of climate, and how to deal with those leaders as they were going out to minister to our students.
Yeah. So shared vision, but also shared values.
Yeah. And so would you, so break it down. How would you execute that? Are you talking about, and again, don't laugh at me. I'm not going back to that. Thank you. Would you have a monthly time to get together with them and talk about some of these things? Would you do it yearly? Would you do it every 6 months? Would you do it, with this group and then with it, so let's say you're talking to a young guy or girl in ministry, leading the team now going, this is resounding with me. I need to change that. No, Eric, I'm not asking you to write the book for me, but what would be your vision and what could I do?
So here's what was my downfall, I feel like, because I found my safety net on the fact that twice a year we had a leadership meeting where I met with my leaders. I met with them at the beginning of each school semester, is what we'll call it. And I thought I checked the mark. But like with any relationship, in any relationship, like you think about our wives, right? Like imagine if we only share our goals and communication with them once a month or twice a year.
And you're doing it as a check mark too.
Yeah. It's like, hey, I told you that I'm going to do this year. Yeah. Done. All right. We'll see you again in September.
Yeah.
I realized that.
How are you not happy with me?
Yeah. How are you not happy? Why? Come on, Denny. I told you no cats. But truly recognizing that, like with any relationship, especially those that are going to be the ones carrying out your vision, to recognize that there's a value of meeting with them. So if I was to do it back, at the very least, I would do at least once a month. Yeah. But realistically, what I would think I would do if I were them, and this might seem like too extra, but again, we're trying to reach people with the gospel, is to do it in a way that it will be every other 2 weeks or again, at least once a month, but to do it so often where the vision is communicated. And then I would say, if you already have a solid core group where they believe and where they all stand, then you can tone it down a little bit, if you feel like that. But again, the necessity of communicating.
Well, in a standing meeting, so there's a book, I can't remember the name of it. It's going to bother me. But
standing meetings.
So there's Make it stick.
Yeah. Oh, wait. No, it's not that. For a second, I was like, wait, is that it? No. There's a book about
That's a good book, though. Make it stick.
Yeah,
Larry Osborne.
By the way, Larry, whenever you want to be on the podcast.
Hey, let us know.
So there's
let them know.
I just got pushed out. There's a book that talks about like how to do meetings well, and they basically format it in different kinds of meetings. So basically you build agendas, but one of the options they say is have a standing meeting, they call it, which is it's short, it's 5 to 10 minutes. Nobody sits down. You make it a point that you're all standing and you share something. Yeah. And you individually just go each person 30 seconds. Yeah. You could do something like that on a weekly basis if you wanted to. I know Matt and I, and it's my fault, I don't get to youth group as early as I want to, as I used to there. But Matt and I would take time and pray before each youth group and just take that moment to kind of like, hey, what's our focus right now? And that's something I really appreciated. And he'll hear that and be like, oh, he'll think that it's like his fault that he's not doing it. But it's my fault that I don't show up early enough. So, but that is something that
we love you, Matt.
I do. I love.
I haven't met you, but we'll love you.
Love you. Yeah. I can't say enough good things about Matt. But that's something I do appreciate is like making that intentional. Like, hey, we're going to pray together. What's our focus? You know.
So there was a youth group that I served with. Mm-hmm. This may sound a little extreme to some people. There was a youth group that I served with that every week they had a standing meeting.
Yeah.
To the best of their abilities and life, they required it for all of their leaders. And if you didn't show up after a consistent period of time, you had a conversation of, are you in or not?
Yeah. Yeah.
In that meeting, they would go around, because in their small groups, they would go around of, hey, how you doing in your quiet time? Hey, how many days a week of quiet time did you do? Hey, you memorized scripture. What verses this week did you memorize? And so guess what they did at their standing meeting? They did that with all their leaders.
Wow.
And they went around, and I stood there and listened to leaders week in and week out go, hey, this week, hey guys, I need you to pray for me. I only spent about 3 days of my quiet time this week. Hey guys, this week, it was a great week. I'll be honest with you. I checked the box. I did 7 days, but I just checked the box.
Yeah.
And there were leaders like, I didn't do it at all. And they felt a little bit of shame. And I remember watching the head person go, the desire is not to make you feel shame. The desires for an accountability, but here's what I watched them do. The same things that they held their students to, they held their leaders to. So it was a trickle down process of, and I remember even sitting there basically going, dude, there's no way Josh is going to now sit in his small group and ask about quiet time when he's not doing his quiet time. I watched that leader come around Josh and go, hey, Josh, how can I help you grow in your personal walk? Yeah. And again, it was this like discipleship process.
Yeah. That's an intentional. I think that's a very good intentional discipleship process.
And to not push back, but also to add to that, I think too that like we can fall to thinking that it has to be this organized meeting every time.
Sure.
Like it can also be you as the leader meeting with a leader on one-on-one.
Yeah.
Having that time like regularly with that leader where you may even be able to ask questions more personal that you wouldn't feel comfortable asking to a big group. You know, how's your purity for once? Like how's your relationship with your girlfriend or your wife? Like how are you guys, like things that you don't want to ask?
Well, one or the other.
Yeah, one or the other. Yeah. Not you, Justin.
Hey, listen, here's the deal. I think we could do another one of these and talk about even just family life. Like how would you in ministry have done family life? Yeah. But ladies and gentlemen, we have Pursuit Camp this weekend.
Yeah, I know you do have to get going here.
We need to get going. Hey, Josh, I think it's time, unfortunately, that we transition over to
small group. Just seeing if you're paying attention.
That's right. Yeah.
I am sad that we have to end as early as we do, and that's okay. We'll do more in the future. But
sorry, guys, we have camp.
Yeah. So we had a plan for small group, and I still want to do that plan. But I also want you to talk a little bit more about that initiative. Can you talk about it, the Pursuit Camp initiative with the young adult thing?
Oh yeah. So
because that's it's awesome.
Right now, it's just a topic of conversation of are there enough 19 to 30-year-olds that are out there that would say, are there enough college and career ministry and do a retreat specifically for them, bring in a speaker.
So cool.
Here's the deal. I was talking to the guys in the DR, you may know him, Marcelo, and he was like, one of the biggest things that we do I know.
Dude, it is the best camp.
And they do it multiple times a year.
It's so much fun.
Then I'm sitting there and I'm talking to, when we were over in Word of Life, Germany, and I was the speaker for their young adults.
No way.
They bring in all of their counselors because they don't have Bible Institute. They bring in all their counselors for a weekend. They do a retreat just for them.
Dude, I'm
and
so
then
excited
they said,
this.
hey, this is actually one of our biggest things. We do this 2 or 3 different times a year.
I love that.
Then later on, I'm on the conversation with Matt Melville. By the way, Matt Melville, can't wait to have you on the podcast.
That'd be fun.
And he's like, sorry, man, I'm ramping up for our college and career. And I was like,
Portugal.
Yeah.
Argentina does it too.
Yeah. I would say.
I was like, are we the only Word of Life location?
Dude, I want to be involved.
Doesn't?
Let me be involved with that. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I love that.
I think it would be a huge hit if you guys
would you send a group from Ohio down?
I would advertise it.
Yo, email us stackingchairspod@wolt.org. Let us know if you'd be interested.
Like I said, there is a huge need right now for community, and there's a huge need right now for young adults to be able to find genuine community and purpose and meaning. And right now we live in a culture that sells the illusion of those things, but that's what it is. Illusion.
Social media is not that.
Very last minutes. Anyways. Erick, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Tell us about your podcast, Beyond the Pew.
And we asked him to.
We asked him to do this.
Yeah.
And I'm asking him to do this. Beyond the Pew, plug it.
Yeah, so this is just a simple podcast we do at my church. My church called Maranatha Bible Church is in Akron, Ohio.
NBC 95.
NBC95.org. And we do this podcast, Pastor Bruce and I. Pastor Bruce is our associate pastor. And it's just a podcast with the purpose of dealing with things beyond Sunday. What does the Christian life looks like beyond Sunday? You know, sometimes we can be regularly attendants at a church. We go in, we sit in the pew or in the chairs or wherever your church have, and we sit there and we just consume, and then that's it. We leave the building and then see you again next week. But the call to live the things that we learn in Sunday, but not just in Sunday, in the Bible, and to live them out every single day of the week. So we just talk about those things.
I love that.
We take questions. One day you can hear us talk about abortion, and the next day it will be about political stuff, and then the next day it will be about the Bills or, unfortunately, the Browns. I'm a Browns fan.
So I'm a Bengals fan.
Yeah, sorry, man. The ref, they got you.
Hey,
but that's essentially what it is.
As we're going around in small group, Josh, talk to us about, you mentioned Don Reichert, your wife works about, what area of ministry with Word of Life does that work?
Oh, yeah, so youth ministries, so check out youth ministries. We have some great curriculum, great resources. My wife gets to be a part of that and help with the art. And Dawn, they do such an amazing job just making this stuff look really good. But the content for our curriculum is well thought out. It's theologically based. It is great. The Word of Life Quiet Time, Word of Life curriculum,
moves you to
teacher
small
source.
group.
Yep.
A lot of tools and stuff for the teachers, for the leaders.
Oh yeah, no.
And we do it for preschool ministry, children's
all the way through,
ministry,
Gopher Buddies, all the way through.
Middle school and high school.
So check out Youth Ministries, Word of Life Youth Ministries, and I'll put the link down below here so you can check it out in our in both our description and our video. So
awesome. But Josh, we're coming up on a year on a video series, a video that you guys made. That, do you want to plug that at all?
Wait, what do you?
The Ukraine video?
Oh yeah, no, guys, it'll have been a year since Russia first attacked Ukraine, and we made a documentary. Please, you guys check that out. I'll put a link down below as well. We're going to be doing some time just to commemorate all of what God has been doing there, and with our missionaries and how they have been such a huge help with humanitarian aid, but also giving hope through Jesus Christ. And it is my favorite story that I've ever been able to help tell. And definitely worth checking it out. It's an hour-long documentary, but definitely worth the time to watch and to see what God has done there. So thanks for the reminder.
Absolutely. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in for another episode of Stacking Chairs. As you know, we just want to put tools in your toolbox, resources in your hand, ideas of how to interact on ministry. But I really want to challenge you, whether you're a leader or you're the leader, have a conversation with your team about this, pouring into leaders and listen, love your leader enough to say, listen, I need more help in this area, or love your people enough to say, hey guys, I haven't been leading you well in this area. Eric, I appreciate your rawness. And
this has been great.
So awesome.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, man.
Yeah,
That's
pleasure.
Cool. And always remember, stack those chairs!